Fournette. I feel like he's just more of a holdover. And then they just want their comp third in 22. Because they have to. I just feel that that's the way that happens.
Good.
If they end up taking like Vaughn or Edwards-Helaire, they're going to obviously drop, and I'm going to be all over that.
It'll be interesting to see how that falls out. I mean, I'm glad that they're holding it the way they're holding it, and everything's going to happen in the next few weeks because I want to see where some of these guys go. There's a lot of interesting, fits, but we'll see. All right, so we are live on Facebook. We're live on YouTube. Look at that. Everything worked without a problem.
I was going to say, I can't even see you on mine because my Skype's all screwed up. But at least if I got Facebook up, I'll mute it, and then I can hear you, and it sounds like I know what I'm doing.
Well, as long as you can hear me, the video doesn't matter. You don't need to see my ugly mug. You know what it looks like.
Like, I literally see your profile, and that's it. But that's okay.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay. Now mute the chat so that way I'm not hearing everything.
Okay, so let me fix get you in there. And perfect. Cool. All right. Well, I guess we'll get going. I think we're ready to rock. Everything looks good. Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for anybody who's going to tune in at some point and watch this IDP video. I know we were live last night and it went really well. We had a lot of good talk and a lot of good questions on the offensive side, but we need to show love to the defensive side because defensive fantasy football is pretty awesome, and you guys are missing out if you don't do it. But tonight we got a special guest. So last week I had Craig from the team on, and this time we've got Paul, who most of you know in our Facebook community. Paul Veldboom is the man. Him and I always have good conversations about defense and all things sports cards and anything else that we talk about over on Discord. Paul, how you doing tonight, brother?
Excellent. I am excellent. Work sucks. COVID sucks. At least we can all sit here and watch the
draft. we will get the draft. It's interesting, the news that's been dropping this afternoon. The draft is going to happen as expected, which we all kind of thought was going to be the case because, there's no sports. So NFL normally is king, but can be king, at the end of the month. But I also saw that Antonio Brown got an agent. What I know that isn't defensive related, but how do you feel about that?
I don't think it fixes any of his legal issues, and then until that happens, he's just kind of out. Like, I wouldn't be offering any more than a late third, and even then, like, I don't know, fourth.
Oh yeah, you think he's got to be suspended for the year, but when he comes back.
Yeah, I mean, they basically did it with Hunt. That was, what, 3 or 4 games if they had it? And then after the fact, they went, oh, yeah, those 8 games you sat out because you were kicked out, oh, yeah, that doesn't matter. Like, I can see the same thing happening to him.
Yeah, and that's a tough thing is, with as talented as the player is, I wouldn't keep holding on to him at this point. There's just nothing to, So he sits out and winds up getting suspended for a year and comes back and he's 32. Now he's had 2 years basically away from the NFL. I mean, at what point is it just not worth the risk?
I mean, is it something that you're playing 35 to 40 guys? Okay, fine. And that's for offense only. But, I mean, how deep are you? If you're the guy who picks first because you earned it, I would surely throw my fourth out there just because he helps you pick first the year after. But other than that, I don't know why you would really own him unless you're super deep. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I would agree. I thought it was interesting. It looks like he's trying to make his way back in, but we'll see. We'll see if the NFL even allows that because he's until he gets his character issues figured out, until he gets his head straight. Doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of other things I saw. I mean, I saw that the Rams were going to use Henderson and someone else, but I think that was pretty much expected anyways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked about that. Was that last week or maybe even last night? We expected LA to bring in somebody with Henderson. He's definitely not. He can't carry the workload by himself. And what are you going to trust John Kelly and Malcolm Brown? I mean, that's
I missed on him. I thought he would be good.
which one?
I guess he does. Kelly.
Oh,
I thought
yeah.
he would be someone that was actually a player. And okay,
That goes to show you. I liked him. Was he Tennessee when he was in college? I liked him at Tennessee, but it ain't looking so good.
Yeah, I mean, when you're cut and no one else really wants you, oh, okay. All right, move on.
Right. All right, so you offensive guys, that's about all you're getting from us tonight on the offensive side. You'll have to tune back in tomorrow night if you want more offensive action. Tonight we're talking defense. Tonight we're talking all defense. So Anthony Leone, if you're out there watching, buckle up because you're in for a thrill ride. We're talking rookies, and we know the offensive side of this draft class is deep. How do you feel about the overall defensive draft class this season?
I think the defensive ends slash edge. I think you can find someone decent out there in the third round. Backers, not so much. Corners, I'm not as high on a lot of them as the NFL is, but who knows? And safeties, it's just there's nothing there unless Simmons somehow gets safety eligible.
Yeah, it's tough because I think that some of the safeties could develop, but there's no clear-cut guys that are ready to step in and be something right now.
And I agree. I mean, you have your hitters, and then you have your guys who are playing corner. There's no one. You don't have Derwin James out there for this year.
No, not at all.
He's just not. There's no one who plays a pure center field. Who is the Ohio State? Was it Hooker a couple years ago?
Oh yeah, Malik Hooker. Yep.
He could play center field. You just don't have that this year.
No, not at all. But the interesting thing is there is when as I put together my rookie list and my rankings, we talked about before the show started, there were like 4 guys. I'm like, you know what? I think they could probably be starters this year. After that, I'm like, most of these guys will probably be maybe rotational guys, but nobody from a fantasy perspective I'm super excited about, which stinks because, we've had some pretty good defensive draft classes the last few years. This one doesn't seem as strong overall.
I agree. You had a couple heavy hitters and a couple guys at least from the non-defensive end that they need the position.
Right.
On the offensive side, I usually stick with talent over situation. The defensive side is a lot more situation, and there's just looking at backer, I got 4 or 5 of them in that second tier that you go, okay, well, who's got situation? It's not even like, all right, well, let's wait for a year while AJ Green leaves Cincinnati, and then it's clearly him. I don't even know if some of these guys are even good enough to fill that once that particular situation happens.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what I'm excited about seeing in the draft because I need to see where these guys go because some of them, maybe that does make it a little more interesting. But, overall, it's like, okay, well, we got to see what happens because some of these guys just don't strike me as guys that'll really help your fantasy roster. Travis over on YouTube, what's up, brother? Glad you're with us tonight. And then Craig over on Facebook, we knew Craig was going to be joining us because he's been excited. He wants to get you lined up and he wants to get you going.
I gotta tell you guys this because this is Craig's absolutely shining moment. I'm gonna start this with one of my shining moments. right before the 2005 draft, there were probably 10 of us in our little dorm, and we all submitted the first round mock right beforehand. I was the only one there who had Rodgers to the Packers, and everyone looked at me like I was insane. I had it mocked where we traded up with Houston because that was the first season after they had their comp selections, and I thought, all right, Houston maybe needs a little more. Okay, fine. They ended up moving that to Washington, and Rodgers ended up falling anyways. So I ended up looking like a complete genius because I got basically 3/4 of that accurate, outside of the fact that we moved up for him. On the flip side, Craig, 2 years later, we're sitting there and we're the only ones there, and I was reasonably sure that I knew everyone in the first, I don't know, 3 rounds or 4 rounds. Craig looks at me, literally from the bathroom, and goes, I think Arizona selects Cody Brown, one of those defensive end edge hybrids. And I went, who the is that? As I look at the screen, he's the pick. I'm like, well, I lost. And for every selection, we put $1 in the middle, and he who got it won what was ever in the middle. We missed everyone in the second round, and he won because of that. And I went, I got to give you props. Got to give you props.
I've only known Craig for a little while, but so far, I mean, he's very, very intelligent about fantasy football and football in general. I mean, I really enjoy the conversations him and I have been having about defense, and even in the league, we're all in together. I mean, just talking trade with him, it's like he's a solid dude. I mean, just like you guys know your stuff. It's always a good conversation, and I think that's what we need in fantasy sports. We need guys that help us get better. And
yeah, I agree. If I could run the offense and he runs defense, we'd be looking pretty good. Because he knows the tier 2 and 3 players a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
And he picks up scrap heap guys and ends up making like an above average defense. It's pretty incredible to watch.
That's awesome. So, okay, so we'll get going, and I should say we probably need to talk about the top 2 guys, but everybody kind of knows that Chase Young and Isaiah Simmons are kind of locks in the fantasy world for, going at the top 2 spots for defense. But, what's your take on these 2 guys? How do you feel about them? Where do you want to see them go? Where do you think is kind of the best fit for them because they're the big names in this draft? Give me your take on them.
Simmons, he could play anywhere in the NFL. All 32 would love him. He's my top overall. Young's a pretty sweet player, but Simmons can play literally all 11 spots on the defense and look fine. He's going to get lots of solos, lots of assists, enough sacks. He's everything that you're looking for.
Yeah, he seems like kind of a guy that you're almost going to be able to plug and play from day one in your leagues.
Yeah, fantasy, actual football.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Well, especially when you've seen guys like Luke Kuechly step out, there's room in the top tier of defensive fantasy producers now because you're losing a guy like Kuechly. So there's going to be, somebody's going to jump up there into the top, top 20, 25 because of that. And I could see Simmons be one of those guys early on. I mean, arguably, top 30 at the end of the year. I mean, easily.
I agree. I bet someone 20 that Simmons goes ahead of Young if both, or how did I put it? I bet somebody 20 that the Skins takes Simmons over Young if both of them are on the board when Washington selects. I know that's unusual, and I know I'm going to get, oh, well, you got caveats, yada, yada, yada. I don't want them trading for like 7 or something because someone wants Tua and that whole situation. I'm just saying, even up, I think Simmons goes ahead of them.
Well, and when you look at Washington's defensive line, I mean, they invested a lot of early draft capital in that. Like, I could easily make the case that if they fit Ron Rivera's 4-3 scheme, because you know he's going to bring kind of that more traditional style back, if he can make them all work, why does he need to go get a guy like Chase Young? Why can't he trade back and go get a better linebacker? Because their linebacking core is not strong. I mean, Montez Sweat should be nice, but you could easily make him a D end in the 4-3 scheme.
I was going to say, I don't even consider him a backer. He's an edge player. He's a D end. He's not what you play up the middle. Like, he's not even the same position.
Yeah, for sure. Well, especially in a Ron Rivera scheme like that, I could easily see him being
Simmons,
a problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say for Simmons, he's not he's the same as Young. So why would you select him? Like, I don't see it.
Yeah, and where do you think? Where would be a good spot for Chase Young in your mind? Where would you like to see him go?
The Packer fans kind of hopes he goes to Detroit. I don't think he's as good as everyone else does. When you watch his effort, it's not there. It's either third and long and he can get the sack, or he doesn't show a lot of effort. He's a premium athlete.
If you can get him to dial in all the time.
I didn't see effort.
That was kind of a struggle with, because as a Detroit guy, obviously everybody's talking Chase Young and Derek Brown and some of these linemen because our defensive line is atrocious. But, Derek Brown and Chase Young are guys that I'm like, you've got to have them dialed in. Like, they have to be going 100% of the time. Otherwise, the motor, it can be a bit soft. And, Chase Young has more natural ability, obviously different players, different parts of the line. But both guys are guys that I'm like, okay, they look to me, if they get bored, they stop giving 100%. And if that's the case, then you've wasted early pick on, above average talent.
Yeah, and it's not just an early selection. That's third overall. That's a premium selection. I think Detroit could end up taking Wirfs, and everyone's just going to look around shocked. And I would say, crap. Smith isn't getting to Stafford with him there any longer.
Yeah.
I kind of selfishly hope they take Young, and everyone goes, "Oh, he's on the other side of Flowers. He's going to have a lot of sacks." Well, sacks, yeah. TFLs, maybe.
So Rick over on YouTube says Chase Young is going to be a monster.
Pass rushing, yeah.
I hope. Selfishly, I don't want him to go to Washington. I don't want him to go to Detroit either because I don't think he fits Patricia's scheme very well. I could easily see them bastardize him and move him to like a linebacker position, and that's just a waste of his talent. I would rather him keep his hand in his dirt and let him rush off the edge without being a stand-up rush linebacker. But it's tough for me.
I would be hurting if that happened because I know that Geis and I have a deal worked out mostly, but if he's not a D end, the deal might be off.
You've seen teams do it to plenty of guys over the years. We talked about a pre-show. Yeah. Chubb.
Chubb, he's 285, but the Broncos select him, and nope, you're not a D end. I didn't even own him, and I was throwing things around the house. Like what are you doing? This it didn't feel fair for fantasy.
So Travis over on YouTube says, if they take Chase Young, does that make the Redskins a defense you want to own? So if this is in a league where you're drafting, a team defense, not individual players.
Team defense. Team defense.
Yeah.
I want my defense out there for as many sack chances, and I don't think that Haskins is good enough to keep them on the field enough. Almost like when Oakland had a sweet defense, but had who was after? It was like the 2012 era when like defense was awesome, but like the pre-Carr era, that era, like you could see it, but they were just on the field so much. So to answer the question, not necessarily.
I think if you were to aim and get them, because I've got a few leagues where where you're drafting a defense specifically, and I think you would want them for like 2-3 years down the road, because Ron Rivera is good at fixing defenses. Like, he'll get that defense humming just like he did in Carolina. I just don't think it's going to be this year because they got a few holes in the back end. They need to have some needs in the secondary.
Yeah. Payne is absolutely just sweet though. If you run up the middle on them, good luck.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of what they've got going on there along the defensive line. I like Ioannidis. I like Payne. Can't think of.
I picked him up in a couple of my leagues last year off the scrap heap, and he's a good player.
Absolutely. Rick says, if the defense is always on the field, they will have more opportunities. Potentially, but they're also going to get tired, too.
Points scored against them.
Yeah, that too.
I mean, it doesn't really help if it's 35 to 10, and you're on the 35 end of that for defense.
The big thing, to go with what he's saying, it gives them opportunities for turnovers, for sacks, things like that. But, the problem I see it, and you saw it with Detroit as a perfect example, they're tired. They've been on the stinking field all game because their offense couldn't move the ball, so those guys are worn out. And you're not making plays when you're tired and you're just huffing and puffing the whole time.
I agree. And Rick should know that his own team was like that last year. And they picked, seventh? Or no, they traded their first, but they weren't very good because the defense was always on the field. I see the same thing with the Redskins this next year.
Yeah.
They'll be solid from an actual football perspective, but they just have too many gaping holes on offense.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the draft rolls out for them because they have a fair amount of draft capital, but I like Ron Rivera a lot. The problem is I don't like their owner, because he gets too hands-on and he doesn't make good decisions. So how much does Ron Rivera get to build this team, and how much is he fighting with an owner to not draft guys the owner likes?
Yep, and I don't think that he's good enough that he can walk into ownership and be like, it's my way or the highway. All right, here's the highway. This isn't someone who's a Hall of Famer walking in. He made the Super Bowl with Cam Newton once, and that was it.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, dude.
Yeah, it's rough. He doesn't have the greatest coaching background to really go that way, but he's better than average, and I think he has the potential of being one of the better coaches. But it'll be interesting to see. Washington's a team that I would like to see get rebuilt because they've got some pieces that are really nice.
If they get Simmons, that's a perfect spot.
It would be, if they could trade back and get him, 5, 6, the teams that are looking for a quarterback, obviously the Miami, San Diego, or LA Chargers of the world, that would be really good for him for sure.
Yep.
So
I even think they could move down to 5 they pick up another first, and then they move like a third and a fourth to Detroit, and then they pick Simmons at 3.
Yeah, for me, Detroit has to move back. Like they have to acquire draft capital. Their team just has so many needs that you can get Okuda a little bit later in the back half of the top 10 for sure because the Giants aren't going to go for him. They've got some gaping holes on that offensive line they need to fill still. The other two teams need quarterbacks.
Maybe he's talented that someone might move up for him. I can see someone offering the first, second, and fourth in the 10 to 16 area, and they move up to 4, 5, 6 for him.
I could see that. Yeah,
I can see that.
I could. I mean, it would stink, but absolutely. I mean, he's arguably the most NFL-ready corner in this draft class. Problem, though, from a fantasy perspective, he does nothing for me. Like, if I'm starting a corner, I want a corner who's probably going to get the ball thrown his way, and I'm not sure after the first few games that teams are going to target Okuda much, because he's a really good corner.
Yep. And that's where fantasy and actual football are not the same.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where most guys get just frustrated. Like, how come the Cardinals' second corner is the guy I want in fantasy when Peterson is just sweet? Well, it's fantasy. Who gets the ball thrown there?
And that'd be Murphy. So we've talked about the top two. Who are some of the next guys? I know we talked about looking at specific positions, but kind of on your big board of rookies, who's kind of the next 2-3 guys that you have after Young and Simmons?
Murray is my third, and then I have a pretty significant tier break. And then, I mean, I know that you have Queen at 4, but I don't. I might have him at 4 just because of opportunity, but I mean, other than that, it's once you're beyond 4, it's really hoping you can hit the right D end in a sack heavy format.
For sure. So what do you think about some of these guys that kind of figure as defensive ends? The Kaylavon Chaisons, the Gross Matos, even a guy like AJ Epinesa or Josh Uche. I mean, are any of these guys you're interested in?
Chason, I think, is a speed rusher only. I would not be interested from an actual NFL perspective or from a fantasy, just because I don't think he can play on first down. Epinesa, his combine was absolutely horrific. And when you're not someone who flashes speed, I don't want to own you at all. Yeah, what's his first name?
Yetur Gross Matos.
Yeah. I thought he was someone that you can play all over the D line. I thought he was a pretty firm first in my eyes, and that's from an actual perspective. Who ends up selecting him, and will he see the field?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, we'll see from a fantasy perspective. We spoke before the show that Dante Fowler went third overall, but wasn't a fantasy player just because he couldn't see the field.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Julian Owara,
Yep.
I thought he was a later first. He's obviously more of an edge guy at 250, but I thought he was someone he can win with his hands or with speed, and that's always something that I like, because if you can only win with fire, they defend that. If you only win with ice, they defend that. He can win with the speed or his hands.
Mm-hmm. I had a little bit of concern about consistency. It seemed like there were big chunks of time where it was like, where's he at? But other than that, yeah, I mean, his physical talents are huge. I mean, I think that'll get him drafted early just because of the skill set he's got.
Yeah, and you have what every team in the NFL needs edge help besides the Packers, the Redskins, San Francisco.
Hmm.
I mean, am I missing anyone?
No, not really.
Chargers, I guess. They don't need edge help, but I mean, everyone needs edge help.
Hmm. Yeah, you can never. I mean, you really can't have too many pass rushers in this day and age.
Yeah, Bears also, but that's because they overspent on Quinn. But I mean, there's every team needs some sort of edge help. Um, Vaughn, the Wisconsin kid, and yes, I know there are some watching. I will say some not negative things about a Wisconsin athlete. I know it's unusual. I thought he was a back half of the first player. Um, Let me look down my list here. Bradley
An eye.
Anae, but then
Yep.
he ran 4.95, whatever it was. Like, not good.
Well, and we've mentioned in some of our other conversations in the past, play speed and some of the speed you're seeing in these drills, they're different. I mean, some guys can ball when they get on the field. There's guys that just play much faster than they really are because they have good quick initial bursts. They whatever the case may be. So Nye's one of those guys that I'm not excited about, but I think in the right system, he could probably develop a nice if he's a defensive end.
I agree. Who is the Utah kid that Detroit either had or signed? Um,
Oh,
Van Noy. That's who
hmm.
he is to me. Like, you can put him at all 7 of the front 7 spots and go, all right, we're just playing football. Like,
Right.
and they're not super helpful for fantasy, but they help you actually play.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting over on YouTube. We do need to caveat this, when we're talking defense, and especially IDP. Jurassic Park 42 over on YouTube. The big caveat with all the IDP, league scoring and starter requirements matter so much for all of this.
Yeah.
Many D tackles
Yes.
are not relevant in most, but can be big in DT required. So that's true. And all IDP is much different than offense because that can be a big differentiator.
Yeah, it's almost not with the offensive format. PPR for everyone. Everyone has the same. Brad and I have one where the defensive tackle, if he gets a sack,
Mm-hmm.
he scores 1.75 for what a D end gets for a sack. Like, you have to even it out, and you can have the scoring format whatever you feel like. If it's your first league, have everything the same. A sack is worth this. TFL is worth this. Fumble is worth this.
Right.
But once you get it, then you want to switch.
Mm-hmm. So CXK over on YouTube says, and this is an interesting question. So we didn't pose this when we were talking about Chase Young. He says his team is loaded on offense, and with his 212 rookie pick, he's thinking of using it on Chase Young. So how early in a combined offense defensive rookie draft would you draft Simmons and Young?
Well, first of all, if he wants him, I hope he has the 112 because he won't make it that far. Obviously, scoring requirements here are going to help because how many IDPs are you going to have? So that he might be someone who would be someone in the late first, but I could see him, and I had one time where, like, I wouldn't select him in the 4th just because the offense, or it didn't help to have extras. So, I mean, I would need how many are in this league? How many at each position are you actually having out there and stuff like that to honestly answer that?
Yeah, and that part we don't know. Would you? So you're thinking anywhere kind of late first on, Chase Young could slot in there. Obviously, depending on type of league and things like that.
Yeah, because you don't find DNs with sack upside just naturally hanging out there.
Sure. Would you say Simmons is right around there too, kind of late first to the second?
Depends on your scoring format. If you have something where everything's all scoring the same, yes. If you have something where, well, not necessarily in the first, because there's probably 12 to 14 offensive guys I want ahead of them. But after you get like your second tier receivers out of there, sure, fine.
That's a tough thing in this draft because the offensive side has got a lot of nice options. It's hard for me to think about where I would really consider start drafting these guys. I mean, the back half of the first round, you're still thinking you're probably getting a guy like Edwards-Helaire potentially, Higgins, Rager. I mean, those are guys I probably am still taking ahead of either one of these two.
Yeah, if you have your own first and you won the ship the year before and you sit there and go, okay, I need a D-end or I need a backer. Okay, I get it, but I'd still rather take them in the mid-second.
So over on YouTube, Rick wants to know what position is Simmons even going to be eligible at. He's probably going to screw people. He told teams he wants to be a defensive end linebacker safety hybrid. So do you think teams are going to pigeonhole him and put him at one place, or do you think he's going to kind of flex all over?
For actual football, he flexes all over. For fantasy, he'll be either a backer or who might be safety eligible. If he becomes safety eligible, I can see selecting him like, I don't know, 6th overall.
Wow.
I mean, if he gets safety eligible, that's a huge if.
That's a big if.
But he will score. He's going to have so many solos, and he's going to have interceptions, sacks, and you get that out of a safety.
That's huge.
Yeah, I mean, we say it on the offensive side. Tight end, whatever, 6 or whatever. Hey, they're not good, but they play tight end. If you can have a safety that puts up top 4 to top 6 or 7 linebacker numbers, hey, bravo to you.
Yeah. And Jurassic Park over on YouTube says another problem is IDP designations change a lot.
I agree. And
Which is true.
It's insanely frustrating. And you almost have to have someone and just hold them. And then once they switch down spots, I sell them right after that.
That's interesting.
But you have to think, like Clowney was not D-end eligible forever, and then they moved him, and I traded him after they moved him. You have to think who can switch, and would it help or hurt them if they switched?
Right, yeah, for sure. So I should have paid attention to this Facebook statement. So Craig, over in the Facebook chat, is laying the gauntlet down. He said, Winfield is going to be good, mark it down. So far we haven't talked about safeties.
Antoine?
Yeah, so he's talking about Antoine Winfield Jr. What do you think?
Dad was a hell of a player.
He was. He was in Minnesota forever.
I think he's a second or third. He doesn't have the size. I don't think he's as good of a tackler as everyone thinks he is, but he's really smart. Like, you never see him just completely fooled. I mean, he might get out-athleted, but you're not going to see him outsmarted. And I think that half of that comes from his dad, which is fine. I'm not knocking him for it or anything, but that's...
Yeah,
I think he'll be a fine player.
The tough thing for me is he's a little undersized as a safety. He's the only safety in the top, 4 or 5 safeties in this class. Dude's only like 5'10". He's under 200 pounds. I don't necessarily think that's a huge knock against him, but as a safety, I really prefer him above 6 foot, 6'1",
Yeah,
and definitely over 200 pounds. They're going to be taking a lot of hits and going after these big wide receivers in the NFL, and you got to be able to handle that.
I agree. I actually had him listed as a corner,
Mm.
and if he plays a slot, I can see it because he has enough physical in him where he can handle the receiver. But if he plays safety, okay, I can see that also because the NFL has more speed now
Hmm.
versus before you had so many hitters, and now you just don't have hitters that play safety anymore. They're more corners. So, okay,
Yeah, and that's the tough thing for me. I mean, the only I have trouble with him and Grant Delpit and Jeremy Chin because they're kind of all three safeties are guys I like for a specific thing, and it's like when it comes to fantasy, I just don't. I mean, they're just kind of that tier by themselves. So I like Xavier McKinney more than them, and enough to make him a tier by himself as a safety because I just think he has a better chance to jump in and have value. The only problem I have with Xavier McKinney is he tackles too high. That dude's got to get down. I always like as I was watching tape on him, the guy would come in like he's trying to missile at somebody. I'm like, you got to get them shoulders down. You want to hit the guy, not fly over him. But so that other than that, I mean, so that's a struggle I had is I like McKinney the most, and then Winfield, Delpit, and Jeremy Chin are all kind of like I kind of like them all. I mean, I wouldn't mind having them at some point.
I did. You didn't even say who I have as my top safety in the class.
Oh, so is it Duggar?
Yeah.
I figure he's man. All right, sell me on Duggar because he's a guy that when I watch him, I'm like, he's got all the intangibles, so sell me on him. What do you love about him?
Um, Everyone looks at the fact that he went to some Division II school, and okay, he doesn't have the game as some of the other ones. He actually heads for the big hit often, also.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the reasons I like Cam Akers on the offensive side is these guys had absolutely garbage coaching, and he didn't have anything good where he was at. Who was the guy the Saints drafted in the first round out of UTSA a couple
Oh,
years
Davenport. Yeah, Marcus Davenport.
Yeah, he had absolutely garbage coaching, and once you're in the NFL, I look at it as someone looks at you and says, "Okay, I know you're here, but with good coaching, I see an all pro." Like I'm not saying that he is one, but
The potential's there.
I don't want to own McKinney just because I had seen that he was ridiculously slow processing the play. Like, all right, they're throwing it over here. He was slow on that. I didn't see that out of Duggar. I mean, I had somewhat seen it, but I also thought, all right, he has to watch out for like these other crappy players, and McKinney, he had all pros all over the field. He doesn't have that problem.
He's the one shining star in a otherwise murky team.
Yeah.
Was it Lenore Ryan or
Yeah.
wherever he was at?
Yeah.
Yeah, his athletic profile is definitely there. I mean, you could see that he's got a lot of tools, and coaching is always going to be the concern. Is can he get with the right coach that'll build him up? For me, when I'm drafting safeties, I try, and I get worried about Alabama. Like their secondary, it seems to be a hit or miss when they get to the NFL. Like there is really no in between. Not a guy who had a nice solid career. It was either they were boom or they were bust. And But McKinney, I like his motor. I liked his, when he did tackle and when he wasn't gumming in high. I mean, he was a missile. Like, he hit those guys hard, and I like that because I want a safety who's going to give me some potential for fumbles and potentially fumble recoveries. And that's why I like Jeremy Chin. I mean, Jeremy Chin is he looks like he's playing angry all the time, like somebody took his wallet or something.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed. That's the first thing I have on there. I noticed that he had some poor tackling angles, but if he had the proper angle, he hit you.
He was crushing the guy for sure. Yeah, I was a big fan of his, which is and a lot of these safeties. I mean, even I think I had another safety on the list I wanted to talk about.
Ashton Davis?
Oh, yeah, Davis. Yep. He's another one where I'm like, okay, the defense wasn't amazing. It was good, but I think he could be better than what we saw in college. What do you make about a guy like Ashton Davis?
Same thing as Chin. He would hit you, but he also took some absolute crap angles once in a while. I think they're really the same. And I think the NFL has enough of those safeties that will hit you, but aren't actually good. And I don't know that someone looks at him and goes, all right, I want you before the middle of the fourth.
Yeah.
Fifth round.
Yeah. And that then becomes the guy you're stashing on your taxi squad if you even draft him. He probably could just stay on the waiver wire and you see what happens.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on Delpit? I know that he was everyone's consensus top safety, I don't know, 4 months ago, 5 months ago.
Well, my issue was, he had that clavicle injury in 2018, and when I watched him in 2019, you could tell he was favoring it. Like, when he would go in to hit guys, you could tell that he was maybe a little nervous that he was going to cause some damage. I want to see how he continues to bounce back. He could easily be one of the better safeties in the class, but I'm just not sure if he's going to round back into form. I mean, because that injury seemed to really get to his head. I mean, last year he just played like a guy who was worried he was going to get hurt. I don't want that.
Yeah, I also saw that he absolutely struggled at center field.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if I want that. Just with someone who went back half and first.
Yeah.
And I'll give Elliott his props here. He saw it before I did that he was just not good.
Yeah, I swung and missed on him. I thought he'd be a lot better than he wound up being. What can you do?
Yeah, I thought the same. I mean, he can hit, but that's the next, I don't know, 6 safeties on the list.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of those. They're kind of a dime a dozen, and I expected. I guess I expected with a guy like Clinton Dix that the mental part of the game I thought he would be better at, because he was at a more polished, pro-ready system, and I expected him to come in and just be a lot smarter than he was, and if you're not got it in the head, it doesn't matter how physical you are, because you're the mental part of it just as important as the physical part of it in my mind.
Yeah, and we're slowly figuring out that with the safeties, it's more about the hips than anything else. If you can hit, hey, great. But if you can't look over your shoulder and look good on the play action, I'm sorry. Like, it's just I don't see it.
Yeah.
And that's what the NFL is, and that's one of the reasons that Winfield, if he plays actual safety, okay, he looks smart out there. Sure, he's not ridiculously fast, but okay.
He can make up for that, though. I mean, especially coming from the Detroit background, Glover Quinn was never the most amazing athlete, but the dude was smart, and he could play center field and get those interceptions and do all those things you want to do. I mean, if Winfield has that, and I'm hoping he has that because his dad was really good in the NFL for a long time, just with a crappy team, then maybe his kid's got that, and that could be big for him. And I trust Craig's judgment. I mean, Craig's, I've noticed that he seems to find diamonds in the rough that I may not have seen. At least that's what I've been hearing. Okay, so
I think we've sufficiently covered safeties.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. There's no other safety that I was really all that excited about talking about. So at this point, we haven't talked about a lot of linebackers. Unfortunately, linebackers just kind of a muh. There's a lot of meh options. So what do you like about the linebacker group?
Besides Simmons, Murray, I think he goes top 15 of the draft. He can miss some tackles, but you can also have him as the end on third and anything over 8, and he can get a sack. And if you have one that's for 6 at a sack or 5 or something, that starts adding up over a season. And I don't think you get that out of Queen because he's not going to have a lot of sacks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the thing I really like about Queen, though, is he's super fluid. Like, I could see him easily being, and especially with the linebacker, I need him in those sub packages because so much of the game is played in sub packages. So Queen to me is very athletic and very fluid. But yes, he's definitely lacking in some of those areas that, from a fantasy perspective, I think we need. But he could be a tackle machine.
Yeah, I think he's going to have the capital where he plays. I think he goes anywhere from 25 to 45, and he'll see the field. I'm not as high on him. I think he's more like the 70th overall, but draft means you see the field, means you get solos, means you score.
Right.
I thought he let the guards and centers affect him.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't see that out of some of the other backers, but who knows? I mean, and the other thing is, it's not like LSU had terrible line. Like, I just think that he couldn't get off of them. And I don't... Who is the guy that the Saints drafted in the first round out of Clemson? Like 5'6". Who was that?
Are you talking about...
the guy who was just super fast, but didn't know how to actually play football?
Did not actually play football.
Who was the guy they drafted in the first round? Saints, Clemson, linebacker, first round. Because that's what I see out of Anthony.
Oh, Stephon Anthony, yes.
Stephon Anthony. Yep. And that's what I see out of Queen, and I just don't know if I don't see it.
Yeah, I'm banking on what I hope he can be, not what we've necessarily seen. Like, I can in this class, because linebacker's kind of there's not really any major standouts outside of the top probably 2. I think Queen has a very easy shot at getting a significant amount of time and has the ability to play in sub packages. So I think he could give you some fantasy production. So that being said, are there other linebackers, going further down? Malik Harrison's, Shaquille Quarterman's, David Woodward, Evan Weaver. Are there guys down there that you like, that you have interest in, that you're going to try to take a chance on your roster?
Jordan Brooks.
Oh, yeah.
Out of Texas Tech, I think. I think he goes solidly in the second round just because of the speed. It's not that I don't see it out of the other ones. I have all of them here, but I don't see it out of Harrison as much. He could have tons of solos, but not a lot of other stats. Weaver I have as a round 3 or 4, and okay, he might play okay, but Brooks was someone who I thought could be someone that you look at and say, all right, he's my future.
How do you feel about his block shedding? That was kind of an area where I was a little concerned. It seemed like he would get kind of stuck.
Well, considering if you're playing a combo, you're probably going to take him in the 4th or 5th round. Okay.
Take a shot on him for the upside?
Yes. I would rather have the upside of him in the 4th or the 5th than taking Queen in the 2nd round of a combo draft. But that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a tough thing, which is why I think this defensive class is kind of one of the weaker ones we've seen in a while. Is there's still a lot of offensive guys that I would still be taking ahead of basically everyone other than the top 3. I would let most of these guys kind of slide down, and if somebody's there in the 3rd or 4th round, I'm like, okay, I'll stash them. Guy that I like a lot that I think Willie Gay from Mississippi State. And we had mentioned pre-show, he's one of those guys that you don't have anything to see in 2019 because he didn't see the field because he punched out a teammate and was suspended from the team. But he's a guy that has a passion and a fire and seems to be pretty football smart. That he's a guy I would like to take a chance on, and I've heard his name when I've been reading up on kind of the tea leaves that you're hearing around the NFL. He's a name that guys are looking into, and a player that teams are really starting to look at a little more. So I'm concerned that come NFL draft time, he'll get drafted, kind of early day 3, and people will start moving him up and maybe draft him a little higher than he should. But after the top 3 guys in this class, I'm probably not touching most of these guys until the 3rd round if they're even there. But what do you think about some of these other linebackers that are further down? Is there somebody that stands out where you're like, oh, I think he's going to eventually develop into something good?
I had Detroit die listed. I have to even look here to see what school he was at.
Oh, he was at Oregon.
Okay. Yeah then I have him in the 3rd or 4th round, but this class it's not there.
It seems like a lot of guys that have a thing that they can do pretty well, but can they be developed? And when it comes to IDP, I don't want to wait for them to develop. I'll just take guys that I know are going to be fine, let those guys kind of slip, go to the waiver wire. If something happens, maybe I try to get them off the waiver wire. But
no, I get it. I picked up Quan for absolutely free, and I got, I don't know, 3 solid seasons out of him.
That's awesome.
And now I'm just hoping that Frisco trades him so that he can see the field again.
Well, and it didn't help that wasn't he hurt for better part of the season. I mean,
pec injury, but even so, Greenlaw was out there. He looked fine. Like, I don't want him seeing 60% of the snaps. I want him seeing 85% of the snaps on Miami, on anyone else.
An LB needy team. Yeah, for sure. All right, so folks that are out there, I appreciate you guys watching. If you got questions, shoot them in. We probably won't go a whole lot longer because I don't know.
Yeah,
this says everything about the rookie class. There just isn't a lot to love about it.
Yeah, I mean, we could sit here and go, hey, I like these corners, but if they're not actually scoring for fantasy, okay, like Okuda, he's awesome, but he's not going to be someone that you own, really.
Probably not. Yeah, when it comes to the cornerback position, I mean, the guys that are slated kind of after him will probably get picked on for a little while, but the next couple guys could develop into nice solid corners that probably are guys that aren't going to last for you because they're not going to give you consistent production. I mean, with corner, that's a position you want. You want the guy getting picked on because he has chances for interceptions or tackles at the least. But the kid I think there's a couple kids that I like in the class, but I'm just not drafting them. Like at this point, I would let them all go. Like C.J. Henderson, I like. But he's raw. I don't think he's going to give you value early. So I'm going to let him go to the waiver wire because let somebody else take that shot. Fulton from LSU could develop as well, but, he's another guy I don't think sees the field early. I can't imagine somebody taking him and expecting him to be a starter from day one. What do you think?
On Fulton, yes. On Henderson, I think he goes in the top 12 range.
You think so?
Just because of the natural gifts that he has. I know that I saw a couple of them. TCU. Jeff Gladney.
Mm-hmm.
I liked him a lot.
What do you like about him?
I didn't see what he ran in the 40. Hold on, let me look that up. I really hope this isn't like 4.48.
That's good speed.
Yeah, that's
6 foot. That's good.
Fine. Yeah, good hips. I think he plays in the NFL for 8 years, and when you're at corner, it's almost more of a do you have the speed and the hips?
Yeah,
and that's it. I mean, there's just not much because. They don't really throw at you in college because everyone's got 4 receivers out there. All right, they threw it somewhere else. But I never and you're actually hoping that you see that, but you want them to actually throw it so that you can scout them. And I didn't see teams really throw it on Gladney outside of Oklahoma, but. Well, they matched him up with premium receivers, so okay.
Yeah, the note I have, I don't have a ton of notes on him, but the note I have is he's got really good footwork.
Yep.
So
saw that too.
I mean, that's something you can try to teach, but some guys, I mean, if they've got it coming into the league, that puts them, ahead of the game for sure. The only other corner that I was really kind of interested in was the kid from Notre Dame. Was it Troy Pride? Yeah, Pride. I liked quite a bit of his game. I liked that, his toughness, and another guy that had good footwork. So he's a guy that I'm not drafting him, but he's a guy that I'll keep an eye on. If I've got an MFL league, I'll probably put him on my watch list. Because I thought he was good. The only thing that, nowadays, most corners you're expecting at 6 foot and up, he's only 5'10" or 5'11" or something.
Yeah, I wrote down round number 5 that he shies away from tackling. That he's a solid athlete, but he can the space that he gives someone, it can be eaten up, and I don't see what you see in him.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one I liked was Noah
Igbenogany.
Yeah.
Kid from Auburn.
4.48. I think he could end up in the first round just because there aren't a lot of corners at the end of the first. That's mainly because I'm not a Fulton fan. I think Diggs was horrible. I thought that some of the other guys were just not good, and I think he's got the profile that he goes at the end of the first round.
Well, and that's the interesting thing. When you get to that point in the draft, those are all playoff teams. So those guys sometimes will overdraft a player based on, they fit what they want to do and a guy they fall in love with. I mean, you have that opportunity because you're a winner. It's just the way it works. So,
Yep.
you know,
Yep. 100%.
I mean, you see it all the time with teams overdrafting guys. So, yeah, I mean, the quarterback class, there's a lot of talented kids in here that, you know, could potentially develop, but when you're starting corners, you need a corner that's going to get thrown at a bunch. And, you know, and some of the top guys in this class, you're definitely not touching Okuda. And after that, I mean, it may take a little time for some of these guys to develop. Some of them may see the field early. I mean, it's, you know, Henderson probably could, you know, because of the tools, like you said. But some of these other guys, this is why the draft is so important this year, because I need to see where some of these guys go. At this point, I'm not really drafting any of these corners, even in leagues where I'm starting a corner position. I'll let them go. You know, I'd rather take a chance on a different position. And this draft class as a whole, I mean, there's really only a couple guys that I'm really trying to aim and target. So, which stinks. I mean, most years the class is pretty good, so having a down year or two, or you know, here and there is not a big deal. But
Yeah, I mean, it's a sweet class for fantasy, but the non-fantasy assets, I mean, there's a bunch of offensive linemen I like, but, you know, I want someone to actually see this show and not tune off. But if you have a defensive tackle league, I honestly think that Gallimore can be pretty awesome, and I think that TCU kid, I never remember if it's Black.
Oh, Ross Blacklock.
He was awesome. When I watched him, he moves like a end, and he plays tackle.
Yeah,
like he was. I was a fan of his.
Yeah, I would really like to see him go to a team that kind of deploys more of a 4-3 scheme, so he can have the opportunity to try to cut through those gaps and get some of that extra pressure on the quarterback. Yep. He could be really nice.
Yep, and I agree, which is all the plays that you're not going to get out of Brown, despite him being top 5 selection 3-4 months ago. You just don't have that out of him, but you get that out of Blackrock.
Kinlaw, Brown, I mean, kind of the top few defensive tackles in the class kind of worry me. Yep. I just don't know that they're really worth where they're going to get drafted. I would rather wait and go after some of these more raw with the tools that you could use to mold into a big, into a defensive tackle. From fantasy wise, I mean, I'm not drafting Derek Brown probably at all. I mean, unless he fell super far, because I struggle with him. A guy with 1 year production that looks like he's taking plays off.
He had solid numbers for either 3 years or 4, but he doesn't have a high enough ceiling for me.
I would have expected him to be solid every single season. For a guy that's expected to get drafted in the top 10, you got to give me more than one really nice season. But
I agree. I think he's ultimately in that 25 to 40 overall, and we'll see.
He'll probably get drafted, 10 to 15.
I was gonna say that's the haven for teams that aren't very smart. They don't totally blow the ship up, but they're never good either. Like I think if the NBA has taught us anything, pick first, or you're in the final 4 teams in it. Everyone else in the middle there, nope, I'm sorry. And I think once the NFL figures it out, they'll be smarter off. And if you take Brown 8th overall, well, it's why you.
It's why you're drafting 8th overall. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that doesn't help you.
Agreed.
But yeah, I would rather take Raekwon Davis.
Oh, Davis.
I had his first initial written down, but I would rather have him at the end of the second round than Brown even at 30.
Yeah.
Even if we're saying he falls that far.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that one, and that's tough. You know, at this point, I mean, when it comes to your IDP roster, I would just look elsewhere, see what's out there. Craig says we're all in agreement about Brown. That means he'll be a beast.
Yeah, we've had a couple of those in our leagues. Man, I hate Mahomes. Man, I hate Patrick Mahomes.
Why is he so good? Yeah.
Whoops.
Well, and that's why we always say we don't know half as much as we think we know. I mean, that's why we're not paid by the NFL to determine who's good and who isn't.
Yeah, I remember Craig had me after each shot first. He had me put my feelings of what I felt was going to actually happen. And I remember he put down Deion Jordan at 3rd overall, and I wrote down Hall of Famer.
Oh!
It's good work there. It's good work. Good work.
We've all made those bad decisions, though. You know, I mean,
yeah.
You know, any guy that drafted Titus Young, you made that bad decision. You know, I remember drafting Titus Young, thinking that he'd be a fantasy asset. He was just a fantasy ass, is what he was.
Yeah, he's not fair. He might have been knocked dumb on one hit, and that's not necessarily fair.
There was a lot of other factors that went into it, for sure. You know, but when you're drafting a guy to turn you around, and you know you swing and miss. I mean, I've got plenty of misses in my career where I'm like, all right, well, I guess better luck next time.
Yeah, but I also say, how many hits did I have also? So it does even.
And that's the important thing. Craig says, you got Mingo right, though.
I did. I literally fell over and said, this guy should have been round 6, not 6th overall. And in complete hindsight, yep, I was right. I felt that he never had a plan, and it showed. He was a speed rusher only, and eventually Cleveland said, yeah, you get off the field.
And that's why he bounced all over the league. You know, great athletic profile doesn't always equate to an actual football player.
Yeah, who was the Vernon Golson?
Oh yeah, Jets took it like what, top 5?
Yeah, I don't remember where he went overall, but I remember thinking, yep, this is why you draft 3rd overall every year.
Yeah, Golson was awful.
I was right.
No, he was awful. All right, well, I'm not seeing questions. Where are you guys at with these?
Yeah, I was going to say, either questions, or was there anyone else that you had on any spot that you looked and said, hey, I'm interested in this kid?
I mean, the only player that we didn't talk about who's kind of inside my top, you know, and I ranked these guys I think I've got 35 that I planned on at least trying to make sure we talk about. The only guy we haven't really talked about is Malik Harrison from Ohio State. He's a guy I think has the profile and could develop, but he's not a guy that he's going to take some work. But what do you think about a guy like Malik Harrison?
I didn't think his hips were good, but he tested fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he's someone that you put in your LB3 spot, and he might be your second. But I don't see the upside that a lot of others do.
Oh, I am missing comments on Facebook. Hold on. All right, yes, we got stuff, Paul. Give me a second here. All right, so Chris Martin over on Facebook said, I have 4 of the first 5 picks in the 3rd round in my Superflex full IDP draft. What guys are you looking at?
He said...
So 4 of the first 5 picks in the 3rd round.
Young's going to be off. Simmons is going to be. Can I move the whole slot for Simmons? Will the guy at the first selection of the second accept that? Delpit, maybe. I think he'll get a lot of tackles. I'd be a fan of him from a fantasy perspective. From an actual football perspective, I don't think he's very good. One guy we haven't hit on, Jabari Zuniga.
Oh yeah, Zuniga. Yeah.
From Florida. I thought he could slip in the first round, maybe. Which this actually really hurts me now. I'm talking highly about Gators and Canes and stuff.
I'd say you're at the wrong Florida school.
Yeah. This year was hard.
Yeah,
I have sent a strongly worded email that I will not be donating unless they fire Taggart. They fired him. I gave the next day.
The interesting thing about a guy like Zuniga is, I don't have a ton of notes, but what I do have is he's explosive.
Yep.
So at 6'3", kind of upper 250 range, they're going to, a 4-3 team slap him on the edge. I think he could develop into something there. So he definitely has potential, but he's a developmental guy.
I think he measured 265 and ran a 4.64. And when I saw that, I went, he's heavier than I thought and faster. And it shows up on film. It's not like Claypool, who ran a 4.39, and you went, what the heck is this? Like, I saw the 4.64 and said, he can be he could be in that second tier edge in the NFL. Not someone who's awesome, but I would take a shot on him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think who he picks early thirds, so he might have a shot to get Murray or Queen.
I mean, he could probably get a lot of the kind of the next tier of guys, Kaylavon Chason and some of those, depending on the need.
Yeah, I absolutely hated Chason, but if he ends up in the first, okay, we'll see the field.
He'd wind up going to a team like the Jets, and that doesn't excite me any. Elliot over on Facebook. Oh, go ahead.
Can they fire Gase, please?
Give it time. If he makes it another season, I'll be surprised.
Yep.
Elliot wants to know about Zach Bond. As first, what do you peg him as? Is he a outside linebacker in a 3-4, defensive end, inside linebacker? And what's fantasy potential? So Wisconsin guy? How do you feel about him?
Well, Mango should know that. Asking me about any Wisconsin player results in this, but he might actually switch inside, and if he switches inside, he could have a really nice ceiling because he's only 240.
Yeah,
but I think he's an edge. Maybe you put him on the edge on third and long. Like, he's just someone who's good. Like, I thought he was actually really smart, and I thought he had a good plan. Like, okay, if the outside isn't here, Chason in that same situation will go, all right, I'm just using my speed. Bond will go, all right, I'll put a little shimmy on and go inside. Hey, I like that. So I think he goes at the end of the first, but in fantasy, I don't know, fourth round.
Yeah, he's not a guy that I think I have him quite a bit further down my list, and my concern is, he's a guy I think is going to take some time to develop. And my worry with some of these guys, especially Bond, Anai, and Epinesa, is I could easily see him go to a team like Detroit, and I'm just not interested in him. Like, Detroit's defense is brutal. Their scheme is porous, and outside of New England, nobody knows how to do that scheme very well. But that's just a personal bias because I just hate everything about Patricia and that Patriot scheme.
Yeah, this isn't a fantasy, but if you guys end up taking Weaver, I would be a huge fan of that, just because he can play inside, outside. He can play edge.
Yeah, that's what they look for. They need versatility.
And he can play all those spots. I wrote down he'll be in the NFL for a decade. Might not be awesome, but he'll be in the NFL. And once you're beyond pick number 60, that's all you're looking for. Mm-hmm. Everyone will, I want the huge upside. That's not how NFL teams see it. They want someone that says, all right, how do I not get fired?
Well, and you hear a lot of the teams talk about the flexibility. They want position versatility for guys nowadays because you never know when the crazy amount of injuries is going to strike, and you need to move guys around. That's why, especially a team like Detroit, they got just crippled with injuries. The guys weren't that great in the first place, but they got hurt, so it didn't make it any easier for them. Unfortunately, this draft, I see a lot of depth type guys. There's not a lot of guys that stand out to me as like, these are definitely going to be surefire fantasy producers. So,
yeah, and that's one of the reasons why I was a fan of Brooks, just because he doesn't get off the block, but once he's off of them, he plays really fast. In a fantasy perspective, I want the most upside. From an actual football perspective, I want someone who isn't sexy, but I know what I'm going to get. And that's where, like I said, we started this out. This is why guys get angry with it, because they don't realize why the actual good NFLers aren't good in fantasy.
And it's tough. Especially on the defensive side, your work is cut out for you in trying to kind of mine through and find that talent, especially after, the top few guys. But that's the fun of it. You got to do your research, especially on the defensive side. You've got to constantly be looking and working and studying and you really should be doing it on both sides of football and fantasy. But, defense definitely, if you're not on your game, you're going to miss it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And despite the fact that this doesn't help for 95% of us in fantasy, if all of a sudden if you own Jared Goff and they play San Francisco, all right, what are my other options? Let's say that Young ends up with Seattle, just for hypothetical. Well, okay, so we're not playing him for 4 games a season? You start looking at it and going, okay, who do I want? Does this affect the offensive assets that I have? So, and that's where I find the fun of this also.
Yeah, that's interesting. Good take. I like it. All right, so
have you watched Jonathan Greenard?
I did. I have him on the list. I have him on my list, and I think I have him. I have him down kind of at like the 30 spot. He's like a guy that I'm really interested in. I like this. I loved his size and the fact that. Let me look at my notes on him. Yes, so he was the guy that I thought was really, really strong for his size, and he has a really good inside rush move. At least that's what I noticed. Those are the 2 big notes I have on him. So, I put him at kind of at the back half because Florida's just not great at producing defensive talent lately. Most of the time, I'm just not impressed with what they're doing in their defense. So he's a guy I think that could develop, and at his size, I think he's going to get a chance to. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm saying this is a Gator who I'm a fan of. Again, I thought he slips in the second round, and I wrote that he's just really speedy for what the size is, and I didn't write down how heavy was he, Jonathan.
I would think he would fit really well in like a Minnesota defense. As much as I don't want Minnesota's defense to be any good ever, he kind of fits the profile for the kind of the size, strength, speed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And because they didn't or did they not re-sign Griffin?
Yeah, Griffin's gone.
Or did they re-sign?
No, I think he's gone.
Yeah, he would be someone, because I remember when they selected, who was the guy from LSU on the other side? I forget his name off my head. Who's the uber talented that they?
Well, they have Danielle Hunter. He's their big DM right now.
Yes, Hunter. They took him after his redshirt sophomore year, and Greenard is that high upside end that they are a fan of. It was the same as what Griffin was it 7 years ago, 8 years ago? They like high upside defensive ends.
Yeah, well, and Zimmer does a pretty good job developing those ends. I mean, he's Hunter. I mean, people liked him, and he definitely had some potential, but they maximized it for sure. And I could see them easily doing that in this draft. There's enough guys with potential that have that skill set that I could see them taking a guy like Greenard and really making him something big. But again, Hunter wasn't a guy you were drafting the year that he came out. He was probably sitting on your waiver wire in most cases, I would think, because he was on mine.
Yeah. Who was that? Was that when they still had Allen, or who was the other quality end that Hunter was just sitting behind? Was that the last year that I want to say Kyle Allen, but I know that's not
Jared Allen.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, he was a rookie in 2015, and he really didn't come on until 2017, I don't think. So he probably would have been sitting for a while.
Yeah, but they had another end that was like NFL good. And then once he saw the field, it was just 12 sacks a year, 15, and just like, oh, yeah, he's a good player.
Let's see here. Brian Robinson. He would have been their other defensive end.
Yeah, he was
good.
Quality end. But you're just not gonna play the guy who's 21 over him.
No.
All right, he might see snaps here or there, but
yeah, he's rotational at that point.
Yeah. And you only see the field in these situations unless there's an injury or something. But yeah, they've had nice ends for the last decade.
I'd say they know how to draft defense. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we've answered all the questions that are out there. Do you have any other final thoughts? Any other things that you wanted to talk about before we close it out?
No, not really. I'm
okay.
Getting tired. I want to go to bed. I mean, I could sit here and go, like I said, hey, I like this offensive lineman, but all three guys are going to be really excited by that. Yeah, there wasn't really anyone that I had on the list that could go in the top 60. I mean, I got others, but
no, that's good. I mean, that's
fourth round corners we didn't discuss, but somewhat discussed, but they're just not going to see the field. And you honestly hope that they go to a situation where they have a good corner on the other side so that you can have a couple tackle-heavy seasons out of them. But that's more situation that we'll figure out.
Draft will help sift through that.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you hanging out with me, Paul. It's been fun chatting with you, man.
Yeah. It's been, I'll be a lot more interested in showing up on these in the future. Now they actually know how to use Skype.
Well, we'll get you back on. This has been a fun conversation. We'll definitely talk IDP post draft, and I'll probably get you scheduled on a little bit more on these weekly shows because I like talking to you, I like talking to Craig. I'm trying to also reach out to some of the IDP guys on Twitter and some of the other folks in the community. I want to make sure that we're doing some weekly defensive focused content, not just offensive focus. So we'll definitely have some more conversations here soon.
Yeah.
For those of you that are watching or will be watching, thank you for watching. Don't forget to check out rotoheat.com for all sorts of content, offensive, defensive, Devi. We have a Facebook community of 1,400 plus people, which our awesome guest Paul is one of them. Join us there. We've got a Discord chat, and I say chat, I really need chats. We have everything from, boxing and MMA to movies, sports, memorabilia, football, baseball, basketball. We talk everything. Obviously, we've got everything you need.
Everything too.
For those of you that like a little more risque content, there is a chat for that as well. I know Paul loves that one. Michael over on YouTube, there is a Discord link. If you go to rotoheat.com, we can get you into the Discord channel there. And then Sully's 2 Cents podcast, make sure you get that. Sully's been pumping out a ton of podcasts here lately, leading up to the draft. Our Taylor Cornell has started a podcast of his own called the Dino Source podcast, so make sure you check that out. He's pumped out 2 so far, and they've been fun. And there's probably something else I'm missing, but you know the drill. You've been watching this long enough. You know all of our stuff. Rotoheat.com is the main place to go. We're still talking rookie stuff over there. We're pumping out daily articles. And if you guys have questions, hit us up. My Twitter handle's here. We got @RotoHeatFantasy for the main Twitter handle. Paul is not over there, but you can talk to him on Facebook or Discord. He's very involved over there. And we'll talk to you guys again next week.
Yep. And if anyone has any IDP questions, tag me or Craig. I know he's asleep and I'll be asleep in 5 minutes, but hey, we'll certainly help you out. I mean, obviously we're going to ask your scoring setup and stuff, but Craig will help. I'll help. We'll give you what we know.
Yep. And that's the great thing about the community is most of us follow rule number 1 pretty well, and we try to just be helpful. So, all right, we'll see you guys again tomorrow night. We are going to do offensive related. Off the top of my head, I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but I'm sure I know. I just forgot about it. So we'll talk to you.